Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Marshfield School Committee meeting on Tuesday, July 18th, not June, July 18th. Mrs. Bazerski, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Costello.
Here.
Mr. Greer. Here. Mrs. Dargan. Here. Ms. Stetson. Here. And Mrs. Brady.
Ms. Braid is absent. Thank you very much. Could you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please also join me for the Peace Builders Pledge. I am a peace builder. I pledge to praise people, to give up put-downs, to seek wise people, to notice and speak up about hurts I've caused, to right wrongs, to help others. I will build peace at home, at school, and in my community each day. Under the open meeting law, I'm informing the public that this meeting is being videotaped by Marshfield Community Media. If anybody else is taping this meeting, either audio or video, please notify us of such at this time. Seeing none, we will move right on. We do not have a spotlight on excellence tonight, and I do want to share with folks that I heard from Mr. Raymond, the president of the MEA, and he is unable to make it tonight. He sends his regrets, but he has a sick child at home, so he can't make it. So we'll move into our information. Mr. Granatino.
Sure, just real briefly. Great start to the summer. We have our two new principals are fully on board now. They joined us last week, right after the 4th. Amy Setner at the high school, as well as Kicking Bishop at Ames Way, and they're getting to know the lay of the land, meeting with a lot of people already, and they have a lot of things planned for this summer, and we'll be taking part in our leadership retreat next week, so they'll be getting knee-deep in matters pretty quickly. Also, in the process, we started this back in the winter, but been working with Jonathan Borowski with MCM about our new 10-year, not contract, but agreement with MCM. Our current agreement, which was signed when we opened the new school, ends this December. So we've been getting together, Mr. Miller, Mr. Cawthorn, myself, Jonathan, and some folks from his board have met a couple times. Not a whole lot of earth-shattering changes to it, but we'll have a draft that we'll kick back and forth, and then in the August meeting, plan to bring it here for the committee to review it. And then if we're good, we sign that, and we'll have a new 10-year agreement with them. Also, I want to congratulate Dr. Martin and Ms. McAlpine at last week's superintendent's retreat. They did some workshops, led some workshops with a number of people. The one that they were in charge of was differentiating professional development, which is what Amy does as a full-time responsibility, and Helen obviously oversees our PD for the district. And we probably had about 30 superintendents in there, and they were just wowed by the stuff that's going on here. And everyone was talking about how they could try to steal Amy from us, and we had to fight them off. But it was good. And
Don't let that happen. Yeah.
No, we won't. And Ellen also did a one on teaching and learning by herself the following day. So it was a busy and very rewarding conference down there. Also, just updating 255 Furnace Street. I sent you a few pictures, but that is coming along. We're doing some final work there. You'll probably notice if you drive by the security portal that's being put out front, so it'll kind of be like that station before you get into the building, like we have at all of our schools. They'll have that for the preschool as well. They just put up a big retaining wall in the back. Some of the issues that had happened under the previous ownership was water coming from the hill behind them, but they've cut into that hill and put up a retaining wall that's going to help with that matter greatly. Put up new handicap accessible ramps, some new flooring in some of the classrooms. So it's going to look great and be ready for opening on August 28th. And just as I mentioned briefly earlier when we got here, we got news today that the Commissioner of Education, Jeffrey Riley, had signed off on the amended agreement with the South Shore Regional Vocational District. We've had all the districts in the regional sign off on Marshfield joining, but the final say has to come from the Commissioner, and he signed. I thought it was going to be in the fall or early winter, because things sometimes move slowly up that end. But they took action on it, voted on it. So at the next meeting, I'll have an agenda item just for an interim non-voting member from this committee can represent us at the regional school committee for the next year. We're not officially in until July 1 of 2024. So our 8th graders this year will be able to start applying this year for membership, and students in the high school at other grades. But we won't be a voting member until July 1. But they will give us the opportunity to name a non-voting member for the next year. So I'll have that ready for the next meeting.
Awesome.
And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Granatino. Dr. Martin. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you. There's always stuff going on. Mr. Miller.
What's going on? Let's get to the agenda.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Any subcommittee reports at this time? Okay, seeing none, we now invite any members of the public to step forward and participate in public comment. Mr. Kelly? You know the drill, just name an address.
I just want to chime in on that 10-year agreement as to Marshfield Cable Media, Marshfield Community Media. I think that is an insane idea, like signing a 10-year agreement. I don't know if it's like 3 years, you don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. You handcuffing a future school committee board members because of maybe make any changes. I would suggest just keeping it at 3 years, and I think that's more than reasonable. Been hearing a lot about this, so I guess what it's called is the Comprehensive Health and Physical Education Framework. I'm hearing a lot of things on it. Seems kind of pretty controversial in regards to what is being suggested in this, and it's my understanding when I was reading in the paper, whether it's true or not, but it sounds like it's not going to be voted on the legislature. Whatever the committee that's holding this is going to pass it off to DESE, and then it's going to be up to the districts to implement this. So I do have concerns with this, and I'm sure other parents do. I am here to request that we have a public hearing on that, so we can have the parents, like myself, have questions, get answers from the committee, and as well as the administrators that are involved in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Moving on, the MEA update will not be happening tonight as stated, and we'll move the minutes to the very end of the meeting. We have 2 orders of business tonight, both are old business items. We'll start with the MHS Anderson Field video scoreboard. Mr. Granatino, I believe Mr. Miller might be involved with this one as well.
Yeah, we brought it out to the last meeting for this discussion and an update that we were going to be meeting with the friends of
Build Something Special.
Build Something Special, thank you. But we have not had a chance to finalize some of the language that we had met. There was made some minor changes off the original plan. We had voted already previously in support of the agreement, but I just wanted to keep everybody in the loop. I have sent you an updated version of that agreement that was signed by Mr. Costello and Mr. Stiles a few weeks back, and it more or less outlines everything that we had already agreed to previously. There were some things where it made it a little more open-ended, that access, and there was almost, it wasn't the intent, but the way it read was that the group could almost have access at any time, day or night, of the facilities, and obviously during the school time, we're in charge of that space. So we had some minor changes there. It was all agreed upon on both sides. It was not the intent. Again, it was just the way it was written. But other than that, things were fine. We had our attorneys look at it, as well as obviously theirs. They have attorneys who are on their group writing the language, and we're all set and good to go. And we've already had electricians over there doing some work today, and they're going to move fast. There might be one item, Tom, that we'll have to figure out where to put the old scoreboard, because while it's not great, it's somewhat functional.
Someone mentioned Mr. Cuther's yard.
I was literally just going to say Rich's front yard.
There you go. But I mean, they can.
Then I'd have to look at it.
This was just brought up briefly today. I was talking to Coach Aruka, and there's nothing definitive set yet, but they could take it out, and we never have to see it again. If we wanted to, I don't know if there's a place for us to use it elsewhere in the district without incurring a lot more work that goes along with lighting it up. So it might not be worth that. But as we get more information on the transfer of the new into the old, or the old out and the new in, we can bring it back here for just like obsolete material.
Right.
It's an obsolete scoreboard.
Interesting.
Figure out what we want to do on that front. So they might have some more ideas for us on that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
I get a comment. I don't necessarily see the changes that I requested in here, right, or the information. Language in the contract leaves us on the hook financially, right, and we don't have any numbers to support that. For example, you know, the maintenance and under the facilities section, right, the school committee will have responsibility for repairing and maintaining a scoreboard and related components, right? You know, we need to plan the budget for that, right? Some of the other equipment, I just don't see any of my requested changes made within this. I was hoping maybe they could provide us with a track changes copy,
I'm sorry?
with a track changes copy of this document. It seems to be almost identical to what was presented last time.
Okay.
It just,
With the facilities and equipment section?
yeah, I mean, that was just one that stood out at me quickly, right? So, you know, so what section is it here? 9A? Right, it talks about 5-year warranty, 1-year warranty against installation and construction-related defects. At the expiration of the warranty period, the school committee will have the responsibility of repairing and maintaining the scoreboard and related components.
But we would, I mean, in theory, it is our scoreboard, so just like the current scoreboard, we're responsible for it. This would be our scoreboard as well.
They're gifting it to us.
Well, I'm fine with the gift, it's just like, what is that number? What is this going to
Originally, it
cost
was a
us?
1-year warranty, and that was one of the questions we did have. And the warranty was extended to a 5-year.
Well, I understand that, but with any capital expenditure, right, you'd want to know what your planned maintenance cost is on that, right? So we have to budget for it, the money has to come from someplace, right? They were going to work up a figure for us as to, you know, what's that going to cost us over the, you know, per annum, right? Is it thousands of dollars? Is it nothing? Is it, you know, $100 every 5 years? Like, we don't know what that
I
associated
think
cost
I
is.
recall from the conversation that they were going to try and get you some more information on that, but I don't believe the agreement was going to be changed to state that they were responsible for the costs of maintenance or anything like that. I think they were just going to try and get us some info.
Right. I'd just like to have, I mean, are we going to move on this without the rest of the members
We already
present?
moved on it. We voted in favor.
Because we had voted it, even before the final draft was done, the intent to move forward with it was already agreed upon.
And I believe the motion was, you know, allowing Jeff and Tom to then work out those final details. I don't know what the exact wording of the motion was, but I believe that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm not going to nitpick on words.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what the intent was, right? It's just like, I'd feel more comfortable if we had our numbers, right? Because we're accepting financial responsibility for something unknown.
Yeah.
The community, we should have numbers, right?
I believe they were going to try and get us some information on that.
Well, I mean, the claim by Scoreboard Enterprises is that these things last.
Right. No, but
There's never been one that's the only ones that have been replaced are upgrades for like bigger screens. But, yeah,
Till the day of the warranty.
exactly, yeah. So, I mean, it is an unknown. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, we can probably get a number on that. The repairing costs are going to be unknown because you don't know what you're going to be facing. Is it going to be bulbs that go, or is it going to be something else? And that's like any capital item that we have. There's going to be some different repairs. Right. Right.
That I've,
And-
or something that I've ever purchased.
Obviously, it doesn't mention this in the contracts between the committee and BSS, but the plan is after a 3-year period to start generating revenue from the board as part of BSS. Their mission is to kind of an MEF scenario where they're giving out grants, but if there was a case of something going wrong with the board, I'm not going to speak for the whole group, but I'm a part of the group, so I mean, we could make that pitch to them that they could help us with the funding if something did go wrong after the
Right.
5-year period.
Right.
Yeah.
This struck me as a partnership where they
Yeah,
not
it's a
only
definite
wanted to
partnership.
give this to the town, but also wanted to be involved in the future if it needed to be upgraded or if something needed to be changed or fixed,
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's like,
They seem to be committed.
I'm on board for the,
which I believe was why we signed the agreement. Yeah.
I just want to make, it like, when,
We hope not, right?
well,
We hope it's 30, 40 years in the future. This-
well, at that point, but, yeah.
Any other questions or comments,
It
Mr.
it
Green?
had to do with advertising, because we do have to comply with MIAA regulations also, or, I know it said that they comply with our policies, but,
Well, again, the MIA is only going to kick in if we're hosting a tournament. So if we had what we do on our league games or non-league games during the regular season, the MIA doesn't have any control over, they're not going to supersede our policy that we already have on advertising that was set up a couple years back when the football folks had the temporary advertising. But if we were to host I think it's the semifinals and final rounds.
Yeah.
But those are usually done at bigger venues, so I don't think that's going to impact us here at this level, where they're going to come over and cover all of the innings. Usually
Field hockey.
the finals, although we have a great facility and we've used it for first, second round neutral site games, those championships are usually at a bigger venue than ours. I haven't been to a rugby finals, but I know the football are going to be at a larger, if not the pro stadium, the college stadiums, so.
yeah,
Any other questions, comments?
no.
Anybody else? Thank you both. Appreciate it. Moving on now to the school start times item. I'll turn it over to Mr. Miller, I believe, right, Mr. Williams?
Do you want to start, or you?
Yeah, we've been obviously spending the last couple of months with the implementation of the new transportation fee policy and looking at what we can do with the new numbers. Tom and his team have worked diligently over the last 3 months, collecting all the sign-ups and processing how it's going to impact us at the elementary level, at the secondary level. We've had some goals as a subcommittee of looking at how this change might make our routes more efficient, our ridership more notable in the sense that we know exactly what we have in our buses as opposed to what we have now, where we're providing for the entire town. And with that, we might be able to do a few things, whether it's move our elementary schools to a singular tier, which is something that I think across the board, parents and staff would love to have, and whether or not we can move the high school and middle school together, allowing for a later start time possibly at the high school level, which is something that we've also been looking at. And the numbers came in. We extended it a few weeks because we understood that it was a challenge, and we understand that fully, that it was a challenge for some folks to come up with the money if they were registering for the bus fee in the period of time that we had. They had about 6 weeks, but we extended it another 2 weeks, and so that cut into some of the planning time we could have done during the school year. But nonetheless, we have come up, and Tom will talk a little bit more about those numbers, but have come up with what we know are pretty tight numbers as far as the ridership at the elementary level and at the secondary level. The elementary level did not go down really as much as we thought. We thought there might be a big drop-off in people participating on the bus. Those that, again, anyone K to 6 beyond 2 miles is going to be on the bus and have a seat with no charge. But those that were within that distance, we thought might be a drop-off, but it really wasn't as notable as we expected. And Tom will talk a little bit about that, to the point where we might not be able to make, in this first year, a shift into one tier, because the ridership is still pretty high, and the routes would be, they talked about maybe being able to squeeze them in, but it would be long routes, and we didn't want to have kids in a tight bus having an extra long ride. We didn't just in year one, and we knew going in that it might be a year for us to figure out, how it's going to work on the numbers. But and at the secondary level, there was also a drop-off to a point, but not nearly as much as they expected. I think people thought there was going to be a lot more people choosing not to do it. They'd walk or they'd drive, get rides, and there's still a pretty good number at the secondary level, but something that we can discuss as far as a possible shift, if not this year, next year, on the start time based on that ridership. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom, and he can kind of go over some of the details.
All right, I separated this into elementary and secondary because it's really two different scenarios. The elementary analysis, as Jeff mentioned, are the amount of people that selected no bus is very few, 111 out of the entire over 1,500. So at the elementary level, there wasn't a whole lot of shifting. However, we currently have 28 bus routes at our 5 schools. If you look across, we could, just on pure numbers, shrink. And if you see that box that's gray on the right-hand side, the potential would be there to reduce down to 18 routes, but you can see the average number of students on each bus is relatively high. It's 77, 3 to a seat. The reason why it's a little different between the elementary and secondary level, our elementary routes are a lot more precise. They go into neighborhoods. There's a lot more stops. 60 plus students on an elementary bus. We don't know at this point how long that route would take. So there's still another process here, and it's July. it's almost August. So we're getting to the point where there would be further investigation need to be done, literally getting those buses out there, planning a route, running those routes, figuring out where the stops are. It's a lot more due diligence needs to be done before we decide to pull the trigger on the elementary level. So as I indicated in the cover sheet, what we would like to do, I've worked with Cheyenne from Topman hand in hand. We had multiple marathon sessions, and I think we'll start the process a little bit earlier next year. Get a notice out to families in the February timeframe, where registration is going to be open in March timeframe, and then get those numbers while school's still in session, allowing us to plan those routes out and see what we can do at the elementary level. It also gives Topman a little more time to adjust. They currently have 18 routes in our contract. We could potentially move that to 19 or 20, but right now that's still an unknown for September or the end of August. So just in the details there, you can see we still also don't have a full response. In next year with a March sign up, we can rely upon, while school is still in session, reaching out to every parent. Our school buildings would help us with that and getting a firm response from everyone, because at this point in time, we still have it, it's 58, but 58 makes a difference. 58 people that have not responded that live 2+ miles away, which means they're entitled to a bus if they're over 2 miles from school. So we have to factor them into the equation, and they would move across and bump those numbers up even further. So there's the point about the timing and length of the routes is the most important thing at the elementary level, because of the space that's covered. In this scenario, to keep it at 18 routes, there would only be 2 buses at Daniel Webster, and while it's a smaller area, it's still a lot of time potentially that those could take. Across the board, all those routes could be very lengthy. So with the change of moving them together, that necessarily doesn't become an issue as from getting from one place to the other, but we don't want our students on buses for 40, 45 minutes in elementary school. So that said, I think the recommendation there was to hold and to really move forward next year. It'll also give us time to look at some of the no bus zones across the district. We made no changes. So anybody that had a student that did not take the bus this school year Only those students did not take the bus planning for next year. We could obviously increase those zones if need be, but the safety of our students is obviously the most important thing. So that needs to be looked at. But that's where we are with the elementary. The secondary level is a little bit more feasible, looking at the numbers. And it's a little different between elementary and secondary, because if you have 60 students at the elementary signed up, there's going to be 60 students on that bus. Those students are taking the bus. Almost all are taking an AM, PM. Some PMs go to the Boys and Girls Club, which changes the equation a little bit. But at the secondary level, a lot of students are obviously after school or getting driven in the morning and only taking the bus home in the afternoon. There's a definite shift in those numbers from AM to PM. Looking at the details, so Topman planned out routes for the 18 buses in this scenario, and Cheyenne from Topman was confident that the length of the routes wouldn't increase dramatically. They're basically the same middle school routes that we had this previous year, with some tweaks and a little bit of changes to accommodate the small number of high school students that ride the bus. So if you look at the combined numbers all the way through, it's a high of 65, which is a little bit, it's pushing the boundary, obviously. It's 52 students, 2 to a seat. But it's highly unlikely there'd be 65 students ever riding that bus at one time. So, I mean, there may be occasions where it does exceed the 52, pushing to upper 50s. So there would be a few students, potentially 3 to a seat. But it would pretty much be a rare occurrence, I believe. So that makes it feasible as far as that goes. And again, the timing is a little different in that we know the majority of these routes. The elementary would have been is a complete blow up. It's a complete whole new routing. So that's the unknown there. So if you look at the percentage numbers at the secondary level, not a big shift. So in December of this school year, we had about 52% ridership in the morning, 56% in the afternoon. Right now, we have registered just under 54%. So the numbers kind of basically came in where we expected them to. We do have 24 students that are on the wait list. We extended, the deadline was June 13th. We gave a couple-day grace period for people that came in on the 14th and 15th, added them in. But then we've had 24 more students come in after that. So we'd have to consider that scenario. But all told, I mean, it's feasible, but there's still a lot. It's feasible numbers-wise. It's feasible routing-wise. There's obviously the question of kind of phasing this in. There's the rip the Band-Aid off, all in at the secondary level. There's also potentially getting these registrations, seeing how it affects the complex in the morning. Obviously, if we don't do this, the 2 schools will still have the separate times, and we won't see that until it's combined. So that's going to be an unknown no matter what. But the potential, so there's a couple scenarios I put on here. I added it in a little bit later. So there's one scenario where we get it out to the public tomorrow that the high school will move from 7:15 to 7:45 start time, or we can get it out to the public, our parents, our community tomorrow that we have the numbers and we are confident we can make it work, but we're going to go 1 year as a test run with the new high school, a test run on how this affects everything, and then look at it for the 24-25 school year. The goal would be to hopefully make the elementary work in 24-25 as well. But that's the question around the high school, middle school. As I said, 7:45 bell time for the high school, 7:50. The middle school would not change. The scenario would be the high school drop off would be in the 7:35 time frame, allowing the buses to go around the complex to get over to the middle school in the 7:40-ish time frame, with the middle school bell still at 7:50. So the afternoon's a little bit trickier because the high school's a little bit longer. So the high school bell would be 2:17, and middle school would be 2:20, but we don't foresee that as a major issue because the high school ordinarily it takes 5 minutes after the bell for the buses to roll. That's the way it's always been at the high school. So high school 2:22, coming around 2:25, 2:26, but that gives the middle school time to dismiss and have a little bit of organization to get onto the bus routes. If you've ever been there at a dismissal, it's it's a little bit of a cattle call. So we don't foresee that as an issue, but the main thing on the complex is just pulling that all together and all that activity with student junior lot parking is at the middle school. That becomes an issue. The parent pickup at the middle school is a little bit of an issue. So I mean, there's two schools of thought. Again, it's
A couple of the other items too are just the driving. And while there's still a good number of people that are taking the bus, there will be more pickup and drop off, which is, you've been to the high school, it's a challenge on a good day. So there might be a little extra based on a slight dip in the ridership, although the numbers really are pretty similar.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I think it may be even, we might see more middle schoolers coming in with their older siblings, so the parents might have more, there might be more parents dropping off both siblings at both levels. We don't know. We don't know.
And either whether it's this year or next year, those are still going to be unknowns until we actually have the combination and seeing, the buses coming in and out of both schools at such a short period of time. In many districts in our area do what they do right next door in Situate, very similar process. Buildings are a little closer, so it's a little bit easier. And then there's also a couple things, again, based on when this happened. There are some of our extracurricular activities that take place after school that have commitments already lined up before this was even hatched, as far as practice time or things that would side, not the practice times on our fields or game times, that's fine, but where they've gone and rented space outside of the district for their practices, and that might be a little bit tight with those changes.
I mean, the bottom line is that we started this process to hopefully not have our students waiting for the bus in the dark at 6:30 in the morning. So with this, we'd be able to accomplish that. We anticipate that it's likely none of these routes would start before 7 o'clock. Maybe a little bit earlier, right at the beginning, until everything gets synchronized. But the goal would be to have those routes start so they can get to the high school at 7:35. So I just want to take 1 second to thank Cheyenne Spellman. She was doing the busing at Levitate, so and over there was the holiday. It's a tough go for 180 days to run those buses, and she kind of shuts down on June 13th. But then we kind of threw this at her right after, so a lot of work, and I really commend her for the work she did. And she's working on the elementary scenario right now to see how that would play out and how we could, if we could accomplish it. But Yeah, kudos to her. She's done a tremendous amount of work for us.
So thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Granatino. I'll ask if anybody has any questions, but I guess I just want to clarify the choice before the committee tonight is we really have two different recommendations in directions in which we can go. The first would be approving this tonight as a first read, not tabling it, because if our next meeting's in August. So we would need to do this tonight in order to get the word out to people, or we take a vote to implement this at the 2024-2025 school year, which sounds like it might be the more sensible option to get things sorted out the right way and make sure that this is rolled out in the right way. Is that correct?
Well,
is that what
the
your
last thing we want is
interpretation
I think we all want to get those start times later if we can, and I think we can do it with the combination, but we don't want to do it if it's going to be chaotic,
Right.
And we don't want, any lack of proper planning time to, impact the kids or the parents in a negative fashion. So,
Right.
We could make it work. There'd be some bumps and bruises. I think if there was a little more time, it would probably be a smoother transition. But either way, we'd make it work.
Right, and if we don't vote on this tonight, I think it's important to note that that's essentially saying we would not be doing it for this starting school
Right.
year in September. Because at that point, we're looking at August, and we have 3 weeks to get the word out, less than 3 weeks to get the word out to
We need to
parents.
get
and
the
I
word
don't
out
believe that's
yesterday.
fair.
I'm sure.
So-
Yes, he does.
I agree with you, Mr. Greer. I think it's probably wise to take our time. Any questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Dargan and then Ms. Stetson.
Nope, front.
There you go. You got it.
Nope, not there.
He's magic.
My only question is, what would be different in the planning time for next year, aside from the sports teams, right? Because we really won't know, you were saying, we won't know the mechanics of what's happening in the parking lot almost until we get it going. What else do you think we could do with the extra planning time that's going to be impactful?
Well, I think the size of the traffic pattern that's going to be there with them both at the same time, there's still going to be traffic changes this year that we kind of look at, because we're going to have more of a drop-off, more of a pickup with cars, whether it's kids driving or getting dropped off. So, if we're seeing issues there on our regular routes with cars coming in and out, we know we're going to, have to work extra hard, and not that we wouldn't work extra hard on the combined routes, but if we're having issues with more people dropping off this year with the routes the way they are, we would at least have time to kind of put in safeguards, knowing what the impact was this year, I guess. I mean, it's...
Even though the numbers aren't the same.
Right. I mean,
Well, the numbers match a little, but I think the point is that there'll be, despite the fact that the numbers are the same, there's still going to be, a difference in, there will be more people not taking the bus and being dropped off. I think there's definitely. Is that correct? I mean, am I off base?
It's tough to know. I mean, the numbers.
well, what people are going to do with that? We don't
The-
know. Like Tom said, they could be combining route rides with.
I think it's the uncertainty of it, which is what we want to see. Is that there's.
What certainty we're going to get within the year? Right, what's going to be different this year that's going to give us more information to make a decision next year?
Yeah, yeah. That,
Well, that time of plan actually involved
I mean, we could, like I said before, we could do it, and it would, might be bumpy, but we could do it in year one with the numbers. And again, it'd be tight, but.
yeah, the only component of this that's unknown on the numbers is the AM PM. So we have those numbers and we combine them. But so just example that route 2, where it's combined 38 in the morning, 33 in the afternoon. We don't know if those 33 students are also part of that 38. That's where the question of, I think, the numbers, the percentage numbers here hit. If anything, it could shift either way as far as traffic on the site. But I'm a little bit like, I think we're solid on the numbers, and I hear exactly what you're saying. necessarily, until we do it, we're not gonna really, I mean, we'll gain a little bit of knowledge, but until it's done, we're not gonna gain everything we need.
I think too.
We learned through COVID.
Right.
That first day of COVID,
Right.
drop off.
Yeah, that was crazy.
You weren't there? It was chaotic.
Chaos.
We had cars backed up on the 139. We had sirens going. We had
Yep.
police out there trying to direct. And then, but we
Thank God
adjusted.
for MPD.
We made the changes, and we were
So-
able
And
to-
we'd obviously, if we were to do it for this year, we couldn't do anything until, this was done, obviously, but we, working with the police, I've already talked to Chief Tavares, because the big part is going to be, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, it's that combination of the buses going between the two schools as cars are leaving the high school, and getting out to Forest Street. That's going to be, something that we have to figure out. And again, whether that's done this fall or next fall is going to be a challenge. We'd have a little more time to plan on that scenario if it was later, but.
I think too, these are big changes we're talking about, and there's already one aspect of this change that I think is agreed upon that we can't do this year, which is the one tier for the elementary
Yeah.
schools, but it is possible for 2024, 2025. I think that's something that's probably beneficial doing all of this at the same time if we're changing our busing schedules.
I think what one would be a benefit to waiting is, one thing that came out of the district planning committee was that communication with families in the town
Yeah.
is so important. And so
Yeah.
if we're going, maybe we could have some forums or things
Yeah.
where people could weigh in on what they think. I think just, I've been wanting the high school time to change for some time.
I agree.
We're
I
way
agree.
behind
Yep.
on that, and it's not.
I agree.
It benefits health so much.
Yep.
So
It
I'm a
does.
little frustrated with that, like, okay, we got this close,
Yeah.
and now we're gonna table it, but, it's also this close. So-
I wouldn't say so much as we're tabling it. I think, we could vote tonight, or we could vote at our next meeting to implement it starting in 2024, 2025. And that would be known throughout the district that that's happening, and your point is well taken, that we'd have ample time to communicate that, make sure folks are familiar with the new plan. We're in mid-July. We're in a month, we are neck deep
Yeah.
in getting ready to go back to school.
The other thing I was thinking is the new principal at the high school might have scheduling changes or things
Yeah.
that she is interested in, so it would be tough to change the start time this year and then the schedule next year, and, it might be better to do all at once.
That's a good point, too.
I mean, we knew going in, at any time when we've had these discussions in the past, that, that first year might be a year of just learning with the new numbers and seeing what the
Right.
patterns look like before we can make the final.
Right, her
final
first day of school, the outside parking lot's like,
Right.
It's always
What did I
yeah,
do?
she gets 750 phone calls.
Right. It wasn't like this in Bourne.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Ms. Dargan? Ms. Stetson? Go ahead. Thank you, Lauren.
I was wondering if there is a way, so if we do if we do start this 2024, is there a way this year that we can kind of count the kids on the buses and actually kind of maybe get a better sense of how many kids, like my own kids, for example, I paid for the bus for both of them. I know they're not taking the bus to school and from school 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So is there a way that we can, pick a day and kind of count? Like, okay, bus number 2 would have had 65 kids, but only
We do that
50
every,
of
we,
them.
we do that
So,
every year.
just to kind of
We
get
could do
a,
it each month, we probably pick a day or two each month or every
Yeah.
2 months to do it, so you can get a good idea. Because that's the thing with the secondary ones, and the elementary ones are pretty certain every time.
Right.
But the middle school, high school, somebody might ride in the morning but have a practice or play
Yeah.
rehearsal in the afternoon.
Right.
Same at the middle school, and that's that number that we want to try to get an angle on, because that might allow us to even compress, with fewer
Yeah.
buses to make it more efficient. If we know that even though there's 63 kids that might be on that bus, we're really only looking at 45,
Right.
48, something like that, and we won't know that until.
It changes on a daily basis.
Okay.
That's the thing, and it's seasons too. I mean, like we did this in December. If you do it during, at the high school level, off seasons, off athletic seasons, off
yeah,
drama,
drama sports, yeah.
there's days where a bus might only have 30 kids,
Sure.
and then another day there might be 45.
right,
Just those swings on what's going on after school.
yeah,
I mean, at the middle school, you know, sometimes I have 150 kids at the school.
Right, yeah. No, that makes
And
sense.
that makes a big difference on the buses, because that's 15, 20% of the school.
Right.
But at the same time, if we find out that the ridership is strong at the secondary level, and you're looking at 60-some-odd kids in there, we know that putting more than 2 kids at the secondary level in a seat is tight.
Well, that's what when I was looking at the numbers, I'm like,
Right.
well, like elementary school kids, like 3 to a seat is
With 3 to a
different,
seat.
but like middle school and high school kids, 3 to a seat is, I mean, they're like adults.
Right,
you
and
know?
that's, again, it will probably happen rarely, but we won't know that until we can crunch those numbers. And again,
Yeah, I didn't-
paying for it, they might be more willing to ride it more often than they
Sure.
were when it was.
I didn't get into real detail on this, but there's not a whole lot of high schoolers.
Right.
The majority of these students registered are, I would say 90% of them are middle schoolers.
Okay.
The 6th graders all are
Right.
on the bus, essentially. There's only a handful that are inside 2 miles. So it's a lot of 6th grade students, and then every grade level you go up, the number of kids riding the bus goes
Sure.
down.
So this year we'll still be riding empty high school buses, pretty much?
No, well, the one thing we're going to be able to do
We could have run fewer buses.
is run, no matter what we do, I mean, there was a lot of planning that went into this, but we will still, the fact that we know that there's, 1,100 plus registered, we're going to be able to run more efficient buses this coming school year.
Thank you.
And we're going to be able to do that to elementary as well.
Thanks, Richard.
But yeah, so I mean, there are benefits that way. The piece on just having students get used to that. This is done everywhere else across Massachusetts. It's nothing new, but with the bag tag or card, the students are going to have to be trained to. It's just not a cattle call. It's
Right.
just not hop on any bus that you want to go home on. That's one part of the process to ramping this up.
Sure.
The only other thing for this school year would be able to stage it secondary, then hopefully elementary. If it's stable to 2024, and we're stable elementary to 2024, we're going to have that big rush at one time. But
Right.
we should be able to handle that as well.
But
So.
with that, if we're at one elementary route and one secondary route, we're dealing with 2 moving parts as opposed to 3, which is what we would have this year. So, and we know for certain that there's plenty of wiggle room between the secondary pickups and drop-offs and the elementary pickup and drop-offs. Obviously, we wouldn't have to go to the late time of 9 o'clock start or 8:50 start at the elementary, but even with an 8:30 start, say, we have plenty of time to do the
Gives us an extra 10 minutes.
secondary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom, my other question is, did you get a sense of how many middle schoolers and high schoolers would be walking instead of taking the bus?
I think both your neighborhoods are the only neighborhoods that
Okay.
really walk.
I was just
So
yeah.
Tilden's Flames, we always have some walkers that come from
Yeah.
Flagler. We have never transported on 139 for high school. We have for middle school.
Okay.
And we kept that the same. We didn't want to change anything
Yeah.
as far as that goes. So, so those are a lot of things we can look at too, giving a little bit more time.
Yeah.
I would say
So-
it's probably going to be more at the high school level, because based on the numbers, the ridership for the middle school was still pretty high of that 11.
Yeah. I was more so just asking about crossing guards.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I mean, that's my actual
Yeah,
question.
exactly. No, I know.
At that first.
We're doing a hard push
First.
for crossing
Like-
guards.
We're posting that as we speak.
Nobody wants to do it because it's,
Furnace and Forest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Forest and Forest.
sure.
And again, we should
Yeah.
start to talk to our legislators about getting
Yeah.
a street light there.
We-
That is
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, we've talked a lot with the chief and with the town side,
Yeah.
and I know the state configuring as well, because that is part of the state road. But,
Right, yeah.
it has a lot of ripple effects on, going back to 3A
Yeah.
in Furnace, as well as down to, like, in front of Roots Brothers. So
Right.
that's been the holdup when we've talked about even a stop sign.
Do you know, and I don't mean to veer off
Yeah.
course, do you know if they've done a traffic study or road safety audit?
I don't know, they've done a recent one, they haven't done a recent one, I think they may.
No, the last one there was done in like the early 2000s.
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
that's,
so there's a
that
lot
would be
of
an
changes.
interesting, I'd be
Yeah.
interested in seeing something
We
like
could try to
that.
get something like that.
Yeah,
but,
and I know that's expensive and it would come out of our budget, but we would need to work with somebody,
At the
you know,
state
maybe
level.
one of our legislators
Yeah.
could get a budget item.
From what I
speak
understand, it
the
has to
DOT.
be, anything done there also has to be approved at the state level because of Route 139,
Mhm.
the distance from 139.
Yep,
The, if there was a stoplight there, the potential to running back to 139.
right, yep,
That
yep.
was
Well,
the
the
issue.
legislative committee is myself and Ms. Dargan, so maybe we should, maybe we can get our heads together and
Yeah.
speak about writing a letter to Senator O'Connor, Representative Kearney, Representative Cutler. I spoke with Representative Kearney on this about a month or two ago, and I know he'd be supportive. I haven't had a chance to speak with the other two.
Yeah.
We're also working with the Safe Routes to School, along with the DPW. Right now, at Governor Winslow, Daniel Webster, there's a plan to put even more, I mean, we have those crossing lights with the flashing, but even additional signage and lighting at those two schools,
Yep.
right at the school entrances too. So
Great.
that's in process. You know, the crossing guards is a big part of this. You know, we specifically didn't change any. We didn't change any of the no bus zones.
Right. I remember you saying
I'm calling them no bus zones because it doesn't necessarily mean you're walking.
Right.
But every opportunity we can have to have students walk safely to school, I think everybody is in favor of that.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Absolutely.
But it needs to, every safety checkpoint needs to be checked
Yep.
Yeah.
on that, so.
Yeah.
Do you have another question?
How do we recruit crossing guards?
It's a long,
Great
it's,
question.
so,
Sell on.
there's some, there have been parents that have done it. Erica Barrett started as a crossing guard at Governor Winslow.
I didn't know that.
What's that?
I had no idea.
Oh, yeah, that was her first district job. But we've had lunch staff, food service employees. We have some ESPs that start at a school that, it's like, so Governor Winslow, it's all ESPs that do the crossing. When we had crossing guards at Daniel Webster, there were a couple of food service employees and a couple of ESPs, and a few parents that actually did it as well. So we've had ESPs and food service at Forest and Furnace when we had the guards there. It's difficult because it's.
We have volunteers.
Good question. I think, volunteers could work. I mean, the next part, we're going to advertise and we're going to get the word out. I'm sure you've had numerous questions. We've had numerous questions from parents that walk their students to school, but they want to have the crossing guard there to assist them. And, our crossing guard, anybody who wants to be a crossing guard, we'd love to have them. And there's a little bit of training involved, but any parents that are walking their students to school could also become crossing guards and get paid. If they want to volunteer, that's fine too. But
we have money to pay them.
yeah, so that's an important thing. It's an important thing we're going to start pushing.
I don't know if you mentioned, Governor Winslow has theirs tied to one of the paras, and that's, besides the CAF workers, paras can also do that.
Yeah.
If it works, like someone who's working at Martinson that starts later, they could be there before school, doing middle school and high school, and then not many kids are walking up from Martinson, but they'd be able to get there in time for the start of the Martinson school day.
And we're going, right at the high school. We have staff out there, but we also have a crossing guard that assists out there. I think in a scenario where we get to this point, we'd almost need to have more people out there kind of, managing the traffic flow. But yeah, if like, we're gonna get the word out. We're going to advertise, and hopefully, you know,
We'll use
if
our
a
social
parent
media presence too to advertise.
yeah, I mean, it's $20 a morning, $20 in the afternoon, and it's not a whole lot of money, but it's better if you're walking your student to school and you want to help your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You could walk them to school. I mean, that's.
If we had plenty of people, we could shift days. If people can't do it every day of the week, we could have people do different days.
Yeah.
But we've never had that luxury of having multiple people.
Thank you for that. I guess my only other comment is, as much as I agree with you about the high school starting later, the planner mother in me feels like putting this on families about a start time change in the middle of July feels like we sort of, it's out there, people know that it could be coming, but it feels like a lot to put on families this close to the start of the year. So I would be inclined to start this next year, but
I agree.
that's just me.
Yep, I agree.
We had a bunch of questions, not a bunch, but, more than a handful of, if it's 7:15, I'm going to, if it's, actually some went one way, some went the other, but if it's 7:15, I'm not going to, my student's not going to need the bus. If it's 7:45, they're going to need the bus. What do I do? And anybody who asks me that question, I encourage them to sign up, register, and if circumstances change and wherever it plays out, we'll issue a refund. So I have at least 10 people in that scenario right now. So,
but that's one of the issues that came up too, just that, and whether it's dropping off at daycare type thing.
Yeah, and our staff.
Our staff as well. Our staff there was a number of them, but parents as well on their way to work. If they were a certain time, they would be dropping off. If it wasn't, they'd jump the bus. And like you said, middle of July is a tough time to know that for sure, and we understand that.
Any other questions or comments? Just taking the temperature of the committee, do we feel ready to vote on this tonight? Okay.
So a motion to-
Chair will accept a motion to implement these changes for the 2024-2025 school year. Is there a motion on the floor? So moved from Ms. Stetson. Is there a second? Second from Mrs. Dargan. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstaining. That's a 3-0-0 there, Mrs. Pazerski. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Appreciate that. I know how much work went into that.
I thank the parents for their patience.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Thank you, parents. We have two sets of minutes here, but because there's only three of us, we can only do one of these sets of minutes. The first and only one that we can do is the May 9th meeting. So I invite you to pull that up. Minutes from Mrs. Dargan's first meeting on the school committee. And once you've had a chance to read those over, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 9th, 2023. So moved from Ms. Stetson. Is there a second? Second from Mrs. Dargan. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? That's 3-0-0 there, Ms. Pazerski. And we will have to hold off on our notes from June 20th until we have a quorum of members who were at that meeting. So we will do that at our meeting in August. I believe that is all the business before the committee this evening. Anything further, Mr. Granatino, Mr. Miller?
No, sir.
Great. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved from Ms. Stetson. Is there a second? Second, Mrs. Dargan. That's a roll call there. Mrs. Pazerski.
Ms. Stetson, yes. Dargan? Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.